Welcome to A Magical Life, Health, Wealth and Weight Loss. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, lead practitioner at Holistic Natural Health Australia and #1 best-selling author. In this podcast, I aim to give you practical tips on how to accelerate and sustain your health, increase your financial, spiritual and emotional wealth, and to look at something that haunts many of us needlessly, weight loss. In some episodes, I'll have guests available to give you even more tips, but in others, the floor is yours. Drop us a line at A Magical Life Podcast on Facebook and let me know what you would like to know more about. Now, sit back and enjoy, because it is time for you to create and truly discover a magical life. Welcome back to A Magical Life. I'm Magic Barclay, your host. Today I'm joined by one of the smartest men I've ever met, Dr. Perry Nickelston. Dr. Perry is a chiropractic physician with primary focus on performance enhancement, corrective exercise, and metabolic fitness nutrition. And he is the creator of the Lymphatic Mojo system, of which myself and some of my colleagues use. Perry is an expert in movement assessment and diagnosis. He's certified and trained as a functional movement specialist and selective functional movement assessment specialist. He uses programs designed to find your source of painful dysfunction and correct it so the site of pain improves. A regular columnist for Dynamic Chiropractic, Practice Insights, Chiropractic Economics, To Your Health magazine, Advanced Physical Therapy, PT on the Net, Live Strong, Strength Coach, and other industry publications for health and fitness. Dr. Perry suffered a severe back injury and recovered using laser therapy. He dedicated himself to offering this amazing treatment modality to others. As I said, the list could go on. Dr. Perry is an amazing person. I am absolutely delighted to have him on, and even more delighted to call him my mentor. Welcome, Perry.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. And I must say, I love the name of your podcast, as well as I love your name, because you know how much I like the word magic, right?
I do.
I use it all the time. I actually kind of phrase it a different way, because I use the word, you said it already, mojo. Mojo actually means magic. And I even loved it so much, I had that word tattooed on my arm, so it's there for life. And it means, honestly, why I love that word is the magic of, helping people heal, and the magic of the body and what it's capable of. And sometimes, we'll never really be able to explain why stuff heals or happens. But when I looked further at the word mojo, it also means voodoo, which is perfect, because sometimes when I do things, it's kind of like voodoo. Like I have no freaking idea why it works so well. I've dedicated my life to trying to figure it out, honestly. But I usually do a quote all the time where I say the human body is under no obligation to make sense to you, and it drives us bananas when we can't. But the body's like, I'm sorry, I'm me.
I totally get that. And from studying with you twice in person now and doing all of your online stuff, that really does resonate. Like each day I get new cases where I think, yep, I know what this is. And as you say, and it rattles around in my brain, the human body is under no obligation to make sense to you.
Yeah, it's a thrilling journey, honestly, to try to figure it out. I mean, we're never really going to. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about it, honestly. I mean, we look up into the heavens at the universe of how vast it is, and our bodies are like that. You just can't even conceive the possibilities that are there. And I'll be honest with you, I think that if we continue to look at it in this Newtonian parts together view of it, you're never going to figure it out. because the human body doesn't function that way. It's that living, dynamic, quantum physics, energetic thing that if you're not ready to look at it that way, then you're not going to find. I think I saw a quote somewhere that, if you don't believe in magic, you're never going to find it. And to me, that's kind of sad not to believe in magic, because that's ultimately what science is in a way. Science is, or I like to think of science in a way as organized play, where you're just going in and seeing what happens. And the beautiful thing about most of the discoveries that have ever been made that have changed humans and science was by accident. I like penicillin. I mean, nobody discovered that on purpose. They just left the cover off the petri dish. There you go.
Exactly. Like, who would have thought, oh yeah, let's just let this thing go moldy and then see if it actually does something for someone.
Yeah. It's like a lot of oopsie daisies happen. And then you're like, well, my goodness, that turned out pretty well.
So, Doc, we talk here at the podcast a lot about three things, being health, wealth, and weight loss. And people talk about health in a very binary manner. I must go see my doctor to treat this, but what they're actually doing, as you and I know, is treating symptoms. What can your expertise do to accelerate health, be it emotional, spiritual, or physical?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we seem to have this detached relationship with our bodies where it seems to be somebody else's responsibility to get us back to being happy or healthy. And a lot of that we seek from external sources, right? And you just got to kind of remember that no matter where you are in the world, physically or mentally, it's you that's always there. I mean, you're the underlying, what I call you're the creamy filling cake mix. That's what you really need to be taken care of. But I also think, some of that is where people inherently know it, but I really think that people get so confused about their bodies and about health. First of all, because there's just so much information out there about it that it's overwhelming and you don't even know where to start. And then when you do start, one person says do A, another one says, no, don't do A, you're going to get worse, do B. And then that person said, don't do B, do C. And you're like, well, what the hell one should I do? And the dirty little secret is that they all work for someone. You just have to figure out what that is going to be for you. And that's one of the reasons why I've really dedicated my life to helping people understand and follow fundamentals and basics, what I call the boring things everybody's heard before or they don't want to do. And it's like, you've probably heard this 1,000 times, but that's what you should be doing. And they're usually not doing it. A phrase I use all the time is how well you master the basics and the fundamentals influences how well you do everything else after that. Right. And because I'm like, if you're not drinking enough water, I don't care what kind of magical freaking exercise program I give you, it ain't going to work. And if you're not getting your hours of sleep in, and that can be relative for you, not everybody needs 8. Even that is like stress. You got to get 8. You're like, well, I don't really feel great with 8. So don't get 8. It's like if we have this magical thing that we're supposed to fall into, and then we stress you out because you don't hit what's supposed to be normal. And then it's same with nutrition. I mean, people go absolutely stressed bananas over, diet or nutrition. And that's not usually something I talk about, because one thing I've learned over the years is there's a few things you don't talk about because people get really polarized and upset. One you might have heard before, politics. I don't know if you're looking around, but sometimes people get a little polarized with politics. The other one is religion. And then I jokingly say the third one is nutrition, because everybody's got their own viewpoint on it. But I usually tell people, listen, you already know what you're supposed to do with nutrition. So how about you just stop eating like a 6-year-old and eat like an adult, and stop eating crap and eat food that you actually know what it is when you recognize it. When you look at it, you're like, oh, that's a grapefruit, or, that's an avocado, as opposed to a box where you can't even read the words on it. You might want to stay away from that one, right? And those fundamental principles are what I'm really hitting home, but I try to do it in a fun and meaningful way for people. The one thing that honestly I dislike a lot about healthcare and fitness and medicine is that people seem to make things complicated almost on purpose to make it look more relevant, look more valuable. And I'm like, that's the furthest thing from the truth. If it's complicated, it's probably less valuable. And sometimes they elevate themselves up to a status of that you can't do it without me. And that's not empowering at all. Because my ultimate job when you come to see me is for have you not to ever have to come see me again. That would make me really happy. That means I've done something right, because you're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be magical. You're supposed to be resilient. You're not supposed to be tired, fatigued, lethargic, run down, mental capacity. You're just getting older BS, which I can't stand. And you're supposed to get better with every year. That's what experience is. That's what growth is. That's what wisdom is. That's what adaptation is for the human body. And we seem to be going the opposite way. And we're looking for some big magic new shiny lamp that we can rub and gives us the answer. And I know I'm going on, but I got a little bit longer. So hold on, I'm on my soapbox. Is that I love reading old books, like especially in relationship to classics in health and fitness. And if people have been following me in some of my groups or online, I've been posting stuff up from like the late 1800s, the early 1900s, where things were actually done with a typewriter. For people that don't know what a typewriter is, go to Google and type in typewriter and look at that, and you'll know what I mean. And the pages are all yellow and stuff, but they're saying things in a much more eloquent, beautiful way, by the way. Things that are still being written today, and all these new books that come out all over the place are saying the same damn thing they said back in 1898. And I'm like, but nobody's doing them. And that's what I want to go back towards, right? And you'll see that it doesn't have to be difficult. One of my new favorite things that I tell people is that, you know, effective things don't have to be complicated. That they really don't. And sometimes people say to me, like, that's all you want me to do? That's it? And that's going to make a difference? I'm like, yeah, but you have to commit to do it for a little period of time. Like when I do the Lymph Mojo, when they say, come on, doc, I'm going to rub and slap these 6 places and then I'm going to feel better. Yep, you will. Give it a go. Let me know what happens. And then they're like, wow, you were right. I'm like, see?
I totally hear you on that. So when people come to see me for lymphatic drainage, I use the tribal gathering and I actually have it printed out and I give it to them as homework, the tribal gathering and the facial drain. And they say, right, what should I do before I see you next time? I go, here's your homework. Do it every morning. Do it during the day if you feel like it, but just do it. And they go, really, 2 PowerPoint sheets that you've printed out that I'm rubbing my body different ways and slapping it and tickling it, like, really, that's going to work? And I say, well, if you do it, yes, it will. They just can't believe it.
I know. Well, you know what? It also hits true to, there's a few interesting things when you look at human behavior. We innately, for some reason, think because something is more complicated, it's more valuable or that it's going to work better. And that's completely not true. I mean, usually the simple alternative is the more effective one. But on the flip side, human beings don't like to do a lot of things. The brain likes to do minimal things and it likes to conserve energy. And if it can do one thing as opposed to 5, it'll do 1. So what you notice over the years is if I give a person an exercise sheet and I say, okay, here are your 10 exercises and I want you to do them every day. You're lucky if they're going to do it one day, right? And even if they start to feel better, they'll stop doing the 10 because they're like, I already feel better and I don't have time for that. So then now what I usually do, knowing that, is I just give them that one simple thing like you did with that sheet. And I say, just do this. Or I have a list for exercises, for instance. I know that all 10 of these exercises would be beneficial for every human, right? Because I do basics and fundamentals. I don't believe in some magic exercise for your back. And I show them, okay, here's a list of 10. Which one of these would you like to start with? Which one will you do? And they choose that one. I'm not telling them which one to do. They're going to choose it. And why do I do that? For two reasons. One, they said they're going to do it, right? And they chose to do it. One of the things about pain and chronic disease that people fall into an emotional depression is that they feel a lack of control. They feel vulnerable, the disempowerment because of fear on their own, but also in how medicine talks to them. Or they go on Dr. Google for back pain, and then 5 pages later, they've got some horrific disease from Africa. It's like you don't go down that rabbit hole. And just that sense of empowerment of you choosing and saying that you're going to do it is also a form of commitment. But then you'll realize how those small little things make a huge difference. It's what I call little and often over the long haul. And it seems like it's such a small thing that I'm telling you that difference. But you learn over time that small becomes really, really big the more that somebody's had chronic pain or chronic disease.
Speaking of small things, I'm talking lymph nodes here. Now, just as I said that, folks, I'm seeing Perry's face and his eyes just went like ping. Why is the lymphatic system so dismissed, do you think?
That's a really great question. And my joke is this: I ask myself that same damn question every single day of my life of why is it dismissed? But then I have to step back and think about how I was about 5 years ago, where I wasn't paying attention to it either. And I think I wasn't paying attention to it because first of all, nobody ever talked about it. And so I didn't think it was very relevant. Not a single person really brought that up to me in relationship to chronic pain or disease. And when I did go to school to practice in healthcare as a chiropractor, I studied quite a few years. We just breezed over that. We didn't really pay attention to it at all because we were focused on what we thought was the important stuff, right? So I didn't really honestly think about it. And it was only when I got really sick on my own with an autoimmune disease, I guess you might say, because I never really truly found out what my diagnosis was. I just had a body that all of a sudden just started to turn on itself, and nothing was helping that was supposed to help. And the traditional approaches that medicine were using to try to help me, in all honesty, they were killing me at the same time. I mean, they weren't doing it on purpose, or at least I like to think they weren't. And I was sliding down, and I'm like, something's missing here. And I needed to hit ultimate rock bottom for me to say, you know what, I've got to wipe my slate clean of how I'm looking at myself, how I'm looking at sickness and illness and health, because it shouldn't be this difficult. And then that's when I came across the lymphatics. And when I found it, I knew that this was it. And I thought to myself in that moment, where it honestly became my calling at that moment, because I am a man obsessed, and you know that, because first of all, it did so much to help restore my health, and I give it credit for saving my life, honestly. And I thought to myself, I can't imagine how many people are in this world right now of where I was, and they have no idea about this system either. And how excited I was when I discovered it and blown away. And I said, I want to be the one to try to change that as much as I can. And that's why I'm relentless today on talking about it and sharing it. But here's the interesting thing with lymph. When I started to look into the lymphatics, there really wasn't a ton at the time. There's way more now because people are finally beginning to catch on, which is really wonderful to see. And I like to think maybe I played a small part in that, which would be nice. But what I did find seemed so convoluted and complicated. You didn't even know where to start with it, or if you did start with it, it made it seem so hard to work with, and it was very intimidating, and you're scared to do it. And it's complete opposite. It's actually quite simple. The humans just like to complicate it. That's what we love to do. But nature is very simple. She's not complicated at all. She's complex, but she's not complicated. That's two completely different things. And I wanted to create something where, okay, if I told people about the lymphatics, then the usual answer is, okay, well, then what can I do about it? Right? So then you have to make it applicable. But so that's why I created something very simple with those tribal gatherings of just 6 places to rub that anybody can do. But also, when you start to talk about the lymphatic system, it's a system that people usually have never heard of, and they can't even picture it. They can't even envision where it is or what it looks like. And you never see it in anatomy pictures ever, by the way. So they don't even know what the hell it is. And when you learn about teaching, it's much easier for someone to begin to understand a topic that they've never heard of before if you can relate it to a topic that they already are familiar with, right? So you tie it back to that. And the easiest way you can do that is through analogies and stories and metaphors. So that's why I came up with a body aquarium, Lymphatic Mojo, because I would explain to people how a fish tank looks really good or doesn't look really good. And if it looks good, fish live and they're happy. If it doesn't look good, fish die and they're not happy because they're dead. And body's pretty much the same way. They're like, if you want to keep your fish tank clean, take care of your filters. And I'm like, if you want to keep your body clean, take care of your filters. And the lymphatics are your filters. And just seeing a picture of a really nice, beautiful, clear fish tank compared to one that's all green and yucky and moldy and just disgusting, like a pool that hasn't been taken care of, you're like, I don't want that one because that's yucky. I'd like to have this one. And then I'm going to show you 6 places to rub to get it. Then you'll do it. Right?
Totally. Those images have always stuck with me. And when you said print them out and put them in your office, I certainly have. They're in my practice rooms. And they're just amazing. And, people say, when you open the cupboard under the fish tank, there's this huge filtration system. How come I don't know about this? And I just say, easy. It's right under your skin. It's literally right where you touch every single day. All you have to do is move it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. And when I teach the course, I tell people that when I'm teaching people this, I usually will tell them, I want you to get ready because you're just going to say in a moment that this is all you got to show me. This is all there is to it. I'm like, yeah, because that's exactly what they're going to say to you when you teach it to somebody else. But I spend 2 days explaining to you why it's that simple. And so here's the thing. People don't realize how difficult it is to make something simple. So you take all this stuff and then you bring it down into something that is applicable that you can do. And then if you want to crack open that lid and look down inside, there's a lot of the science and the physiology and the biology that I teach you of why when you do this, the way that you're doing it and how you're doing it, of why it works so well. And if you want to go down that route, some people like to know, some people don't like to know, but just from rubbing your skin and tapping those areas, it'll blow your mind how much stuff is going on up underneath where your fingers are if you want to take a look there.
Totally. And I have to say, one of the funniest moments in clinic is when I bring out your Ninja Star for the assessments. People look at me and go, what the hell are you about to do to me? And even more so when the toothbrush comes out.
Yeah, gotta love the toothbrush. Yeah.
See the toothbrush in my hand, they go, how are you going to help me get better with a toothbrush?
I know. See, the beautiful thing about the toothbrush is how that came about, if you want to know, is that when you talk about lymphatic work, they bring up the topic of dry brushing, which is basically taking a brush and going over your skin, usually when it's dry, but you can do it in the shower too. It's just the feel of the brush, right? And they're usually larger brushes that you would go over your body. And then I thought to myself, I actually ran into it where people were so stressed out about what kind of brush they needed to get. Like, where do I find a brush that I can use on my skin? How big should it be? How soft should it be? And then I said, let me just make it easy for everybody. I know most humans have a toothbrush somewhere, and they're very easy to get. And they come in different strengths or hardness and firmness of the bristles to where it's soft, medium, and hard, right? And you just use that on your body. So I did it for a couple of reasons. One, because it's readily available. Two, because it's honestly kind of cool that you're going to be using a toothbrush on your body. And most people are saying, like what you said, what in the world are you going to be doing with the toothbrush? So it's a conversation starter, first of all, to do, because brushing the head and the neck is one of the most powerful things you're ever going to do to yourself as a human being for stress reduction and recovery and health of the brain. Hard stop, period. So the brush is much more effective because it's smaller than using a big giant brush just all over the face. And people were just stunned at how much of a difference it made them feel overall. And then here's the cool thing, the more I'm learning as well, is that one of the places that people hold a lot of bacteria in their body is the mouth, right? And you have lymph channels below and above in every tooth. So every tooth has its own lymphatic channel that drains into the lymphatic system and goes where all the other lymph eventually goes, back to your heart. And people who suffer from poor health hygiene, from periodontal disease, or if they've had prior infections or cavitations or root canals or pulls, they usually are dealing with some underlying issues in the teeth that they might not actually symptomatically be aware of, except for maybe receding gums. And that's being linked to a huge cause of chronic inflammation, systemic inflammation, and autoimmune disease. And so brushing your teeth is, you use a different brush though. Don't use a brush in your mouth that you use on your face, just as a caveat. So you actually brush inside and you brush outside. So it comes full circle, honestly.
Makes perfect sense.
I think so.
Now, Dr. Perry, we're going to leave this episode here, but we'll continue on in our next episode, which is episode 36. So stay tuned, everyone. Please join us with the next episode. Thanks for listening today. Please subscribe to hear future episodes, leave a review, and share this podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at A Magical Life Podcast or at Holistic Natural Health Australia. That's holistic with a W. You can find us on Instagram at Holistic Natural Health or at www.holisticnaturalhealth.com.au. That's where you'll access all sorts of articles, freebies, and more.